Yeah, I've been reading Rutger Bregman's Utopia for Realist book for upcoming literary hangover, just to get the plug in there. And and
Nice.
I think he has some. He has like I think his politics are actually fairly good, like salutary in a lot of areas, like open borders and like lower work weeks and stuff like that. But when he talks about automation and all the issues that come along with that, he says the big question is what are we going to do with all our time, and not who owns the stuff.
And that's the core question always, is who owns the stuff? And that's another way in which the technology conversation, I think, actually needs to get really complicated because, okay, there is the broad point, which is true enough, and this would I think would be where someone like Aaron Bastani would probably lean into, which is that this is great. We have endless technological opportunity, and we'll be using a replicator to produce foods, and we'll do asteroid mining, and we'll geoengineer the Earth, and all this stuff. I don't know enough about any of these things to comment on either their scientific viability, and I always think that with things like geoengineering, I think the precautionary principle has some value. On the other hand, obviously we're deep in an ecological crisis and need to do a lot of things to address it. So, but broadly, that's correct. You can kind of answer the blind techno-capitalism of Pinker, which is sure, let's keep innovating and advancing, but socialize it. And in fact, as Megan Day has so eloquently written about, the quality of actually our overall science has been degraded by the incentive structure and tyranny of capitalism. It's forcing people to produce quote unquote novel research that isn't really novel. It's limiting scientific funding for research that doesn't necessarily have an immediate capital application. I mean, there's a lot of real problems there that the likes of Pinker I just don't even understand. But I think it's where we actually also, though, have to look back in some ways at like the 60s and 70s anarchist tradition. Not that I buy all of these arguments, and these lead to their own traps. There's a lot of, there can be some very reactionary underpinnings at times to what I think is actually the fascinating work by people like Ivan Illich and E.F. Schumacher and books like Small is Beautiful and Deschooling Society. But they were critics of institutions that set out to accomplish certain goals and then had a tendency to generate massive problems inside the goals they were supposed to address. And I think what's helpful about that perspective, look, that perspective can and was harnessed by neoliberals and libertarians to undermine the welfare state in incredibly damaging ways that created the situation that we have today, which is even worse in many respects. At the same time, we don't want to just go back and idealize linear bureaucracy and quote unquote progress. And what the way that complicates the tech conversation to me is, yes, if technology and progress is decoupled from capital incentives, of course it will be much more broadly beneficial. And none of us are talking about like folding back in the woodwork. That's not what we're talking about at all. And even a book like The People's Republic of Walmart has a lot to teach us along those lines, even in terms of, efficiency and planning and what that actually looks like. At the same time, we are living in the product of decades of technology that has been, yes, initially there's always the government funding component. That's what libertarians never want to acknowledge, no doubt. But in terms of mass deployment, whether military technology at the most damaging and harmful end or your phone, and frankly, in today's world, I think we know that the nexus of surveillance that connect social media to our military technologies not necessarily as big as we would like them to be. I mean, look no further than Palantir as a very disturbing example of a company that plays in that sort of shared terrain. We don't know what a liberated technology actually looks like. And all of the incentive structures that technology has played in is flowing directly out of those problematic institutions. So the answer is definitely not reject technology, but it wouldn't just be as simple as, oh, we'll just get out of the way because technology is this value neutral thing. We know that technologies are human artifacts. And so in a socialized space, maybe, your smartphone and what it does might actually probably look very similar in a lot of ways. In other ways, it might look different, and it might incentivize different types of behavior. You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.